All right, welcome to episode 5 of the Bobcast Patreon Bubble Builder podcast. Here we go.
This is the spooky episode.
Yeah, because it's October when this is going to be published. Even though it's only like the 1st of October, the whole month is spooky.
The whole month is Halloween.
Yeah, there's Halloween decorations out in our grocery store now. So that means we can talk about scary stuff.
Like questionnaires.
Well, yeah. So of a few ideas that we came up with to bring up, Grace had this good idea of beginning with something you should do before our next topic of kind of like setting the tone, and that is to gauge everybody in your group's feelings about different scary things.
Yeah, what's a good scary and what's a bad scary? Basically, you want to try to get a feel for everyone's debilitating phobias versus, I think spiders are kind of creepy fears.
Yeah, this is related to something you should do really when preparing for any new campaign in an RPG, whatever. Some kind of, I don't want to say survey, but I guess it's like a survey.
Yeah, I've heard it called RPG consent forms. But especially when it comes to something like horror, you want to make sure that everyone is in a good zone so that it's fun and you're not just dragging your most scarable friend to the scariest movie that's out right now.
Yeah, like for me, I know whenever Grace and I are scrolling through the cheap horror movies that show up for free on our TV service that we can like watch on demand, I'm always keeping an eye out for stuff about like cults, demonic stuff, or like elder god kind of culty stuff. That's a horror that I'm into that is fun for me.
Yeah, I'm into serial killers and ghosts. Those things are okay. But unnecessary gore, horrible violence toward women.
Well, yeah, let's not go into all the terrible things too. But yeah, so I don't know. For my purposes, like cults are already usually a big part of D&D, but like serial killers, that's not too common, I feel like.
It's not. I can only think of one example. We sort of had to do like a serial killer investigation, and that was in a one-shot that our friend Steven, shout out Steven, ran for us. Then the culprit turned out to be a bone claw, which is not a human. Well, it's attached to a human.
But that's funny you say that. I was thinking of the other one he ran for us where it was a werewolf. So I guess we have played.
Huh, I guess there were at least 2. Thanks, Steven. Okay, so now that we've set the tone, we should set the scene.
That's a good distinction, I feel like. That is truly like the tone, right? How scary is it going to be? But to actually set the scene of the scare factor you want to display for your players in some degree, there's probably a few good ways to do that. First one that came to mind for me, because it's something I try to do with RPGs in general, is picking the right music. Honestly, for me, it's usually scrolling through YouTube, like with a quick search or something, and then just using that because I don't tend to record my sessions or anything, so you can just use any old music you want. And for me, probably more like ambient stuff, really. I don't really like music with like lyrics or anything.
I like to pick battle music from whatever video game I'm playing at the time, but that's not really relevant to spookiness. That's more epic battle feels.
Yeah.
But if you're looking for a good spooky vibe, perhaps try your local Halloween store and get one of those creepy haunted house records.
What are those? I don't even know what you're talking about.
There's like these really hokey CDs that are called like Haunted House. And then when you're having a Halloween party, you play the CD and it sounds like your house is haunted.
I never knew that
really
existed. That actually sounds like a great idea.
Maybe.
It's like perfect spooky ambiance.
I don't know. Last time I heard one, it was basically like screams and chainsaws on repeat.
Oh, the chainsaws probably wouldn't really go well.
But I was like 10, and it did scare me so much that I had to ask my troop leader, because it was a Girl Scouts party,
Wow.
to turn it off.
See, because they didn't do the first step.
They didn't do the questionnaire.
Well, and I guess another thing that a lot of people do that we don't, and probably no one is doing right now in mostly online D&D life, is using props. Like, I have definitely seen a lot of sweet pics of people's gaming tables where it's all like super dark room, got some cool candles or something. A lot of people with epic gaming tables go crazy with the fog as well.
Gotta have those fake cobwebs. And then there's imaginary ambiance. How are you describing the scene that you're trying to set for your players? You want to pick a few good spooky words like moist.
Ooh.
How about... There's got to be more.
I was just kind of waiting that instead of thinking. I mean, that's it. I mean, I feel like a lot of this just translates well to good DM prep too. Like when you're thinking about setting a scene, it's that mantra of like prepare the stuff that you can't do on the fly. That just kind of goes for any DMing scenario. But if you're trying to evoke a specific feel for an individual environment, a lot of these spooky type of things is going to be very singular, like location-wise. Like think of a lot of scary movies are like in one house, or it'll be like one small isolated town. I feel like that is a big part of it as well. Maybe just setting the feel that wherever the characters are, that they're kind of stuck there.
Yeah, one of the spookiest things is being trapped.
For example, in the first, I guess what I could call a horror session that I played through in my first campaign, it was 2 players, myself and my friend Brad, being DM'd by my friend Dan. We were at Brad's house, and it was probably like the middle of the day. It wasn't like a spooky actual time or anything. No props. We didn't have any music or anything, but we were basically stuck in a mansion full of mannequins that were posed like a party, big like Gatsby almost style. It was just super creepy the way everything was set up. We ended up finding like one that had like a face like scrawled onto it. The rest were like blank. We had to go into the basement, spooky environment. We had to go into the attic, spooky environment. Ended up awakening a trapped dead warlock that we like accidentally revived, and then he took over the whole town. But it was just super fun for us because literally when things kind of switched into like, okay, our fears are being realized mode, when some of the mannequins started like moving and stuff and we were trying to get out, everything was actually like stuck. Like we couldn't break the windows, we couldn't open the doors, and that really like gets you in fear mode.
Yeah, like where's the fun in this if your party can just be like, ghosts, all right, let's leave.
Yeah, and maybe this means that a lot of this horror stuff is gonna be easier to run at a lower level because your party isn't gonna have a lot of abilities that can quickly get them out of a place.
No dispel magic, no teleportation circle, just you and your single non-magical short sword.
And something else that made that session like particularly scary, I remember, and this was a big part of that whole campaign, is that a lot of it was just so mysterious to us as players because we didn't really know the game well, and I guess just didn't understand how much Dan was kind of just making up. So in our case, not knowing and just that idea in general of like the unknown is a big part of bringing horror into a game, I think. Because if you're someone who kind of knows the rules front and back, you'll be like, oh wait, you said the monster has these like 3 long claws. Okay, I know that's this thing and it has like 25 HP. And...
Are you personally calling me out?
I mean, maybe you fall under that umbrella, but I'm just saying that, yeah, use like it's a more incentive to create, or not even create, just tweak every monster. Like no monster should be as written in the book, because if your players read about it, it's gonna like take them out of that fear mode a little bit and more into, oh yeah, this is just a game. Yeah, and so keeping the players more or less in the dark.
On their toes.
About some of this
and
stuff.
And on your toes in the dark. Can you imagine?
That'd be the scariest thing I could have. And actually, okay, quick aside, in the dark is also really cool, but 5e isn't good at this because, like, everybody has dark vision.
Just make it not, like, magical darkness. Problem solved.
Yeah, I guess you can. Yeah, that's a good point. But then magical darkness almost makes it a little too, like, oh crap, something, like, really crazy is going on. But maybe that's good then.
Well, also, if they're, like, relatively new, maybe lower level players, they don't know about darkness. Plus, you as the DM, if you're running like a one shot, you can say humans only. That way no one has dark vision.
True. Speaking of humans only, speaking of no one has dark vision, and speaking of a game where
played
the
on
players
your toes in the dark.
played on your toes in the dark, where the players are pretty much not going to know anything, Call of Cthulhu. World's number 2, probably, RPG. This game that I've been wanting to run for a long time, but just can never find the time, really capitalizes on this concept of the players not knowing how the game really works in a weird way, where literally the Keeper, who is, the name for the GM in this, also called the Keeper of Arcane Lore, is the only one who really knows the stats for monsters. Like, they're only in the Keeper rulebook. So I guess unless you are playing with someone who also runs Call of Cthulhu, they're not going to be privy to that information.
And even then, like, you're not supposed to, like, fight a ton of monsters in Call of Cthulhu.
No.
So chances are the other person, if this happens, has only run, like, 1 or 2 monsters maybe. And then there's
point.
Like 20 of them at least. So
yeah, unless for some reason that person has, like, studied the book, they're just not
like,
going to know them
anyway. I
anyway.
totally would if I was running Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah, probably. Okay, maybe this is off topic, but yeah, I love how magic is, like, super mysterious. I feel like I've even mentioned that in
and
a
then
previous
if you try
podcast.
magic, you go insane.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of stuff like that. But speaking of some creepy monsters, let's bring it back into D&D with some monsters that you can try to throw at your party during a particularly spooky session. So what do you think are some extra scary monsters?
Well, kind of the first one that comes to mind is the Dybbuk, which is basically a tiny little ghost / demon that goes into dead bodies and basically reanimates them. And it has a proclivity for twisting these bodies in just horrifying ways. Physically,
like contorting them?
Yes.
Oh, gross.
Like backward spider crawl.
Okay, yeah, that was the first thing that came to mind.
Head twist all the way around.
Okay.
Yeah, so
the classics.
Yeah. And for anyone who watches Critical Role, Matt Mercer uses this monster in a dungeon full of stone giants. So not only was this, like, the Dybbuk is already kind of powerful, I don't know the exact CR, but it was inside stone giants.
So it's just these giant contorted bodies.
Yeah, basically. So, yeah, if you have, like, a house where a bunch of murders happened, and then there's, like, dead bodies everywhere, I guess, and then there's just a Dybbuk in there. And then the Dybbuk likes to kill other people so it can have more bodies to go into. That's pretty neat.
I like that. I was also thinking off the top of my head, I don't know if there's really a D&D monster to represent this. Oh man, look at those creepy dolls. Like, is there a monster in D&D that, like, looks like a doll or possesses dolls? Is that a thing? I feel like someone has definitely made that.
You could probably just use the stats for, like, a tiny construct, but then give it some, like, crazy telekinetic powers or something. Yeah. Depending on how challenging you wanted it to be.
Because that's, like, another classic, I feel like, of horror through the years, at least in movies.
The creepy doll. Another thing that's pretty scary, but not as it's executed in It Follows, aka the worst movie of all time. A creature that just follows you everywhere and never stops.
Can we take it aside to that movie for a second? Did it actually kill people? Is that how it...
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, when it killed you, you became the thing, right? Is that how it worked?
It could, like... We theorize that when it killed someone, it could take on their form.
Because it could appear as anything.
Appear as any, yeah.
Right. Okay. I mean, yeah, that's kind of creepy. I think it was just bad movie. Anyway.
I mean, there's one monster that I'm thinking of which isn't really like ghostly or creepy in the normal sense, but there's the Marut.
I don't know about this.
That basically you swear an oath like with another creature. You can have the oath like transcribed onto a disc, and then that disc goes in this construct, and then the construct can basically just like endlessly teleport to where you are if you break the oath.
Wow. When you first started bringing that up, it made me think of like an invisible stalker, which I think can just kind of go anywhere.
I mean, it's just the invisible stalker is basically like...
That's just an elemental. It's a lot more simple. This is like for your players who can teleport anywhere. This thing can literally just show up any place.
Yes. Another cool one, the Olip, which is a creature that obtained some kind of obscure forbidden knowledge. That's pretty eldritch. And just becomes this endlessly tortured, insane spirit that basically exists to pass on the knowledge so that it can finally die. But if watch out! If it passes on that, if you hear that knowledge, you're gonna become an Olip.
Oh, wow. That'll keep me on my toes in the dark.
Yeah.
But now, riddle me this. Did we face an Olip once? So you were DMing, I think?
The Skelebard's mansion?
Yeah, but it was like, I remember it being like a super dark, shadowy cloud of just like a lot of voices like in torment.
I didn't use it in the way that the traditional lore would call for it.
Other than that, I don't know, my memory of that was more exciting than by the book it is, the way you just described it a minute ago.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it was just like you climb down a ladder into what was basically the servants' quarters. And there's like a massive shadow in the corner that kind of looked like a huddled creature.
Yes.
And it's like whispering, and then as you approached it, it started screaming.
Yep.
And then you guys just like were like, okay, we're done with this. And just went back up the ladder. And I don't think you even fought it. So what I should have done was seal the exit behind you.
Bingo.
And then you would have been on your toes in the dark.
And trapped.
Trapped.
Yeah. But I mean, that goes back to like edit these monsters in cool ways to make it your own.
Make everything a ghost.
Okay. Another thing, I'm surprised wasn't like maybe the first one we brought up. The classic, keeping your players on your toes at all times, the mimic.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just gotta throw in like a mimic at some point. Or honestly, at this point, it's kind of just like a meme. And so once they have that nugget of fear, maybe you can like just do anything to suggest that there could be a mimic at this singular location where you're hosting this spooky sesh. And then whether there is one or not, they'll just be really anxious about everything.
Yeah, like they're at a dinner party and the host casually mentions, yes, I have a trapped mimic downstairs in my menagerie. And then they go into the menagerie and the mimic is the only thing not in the cage. And then whatever spooky stuff that you want to happen happens. But now there's a mimic on the loose.
Yeah, it's maybe not the best. Yeah, like the best primary element for fear, but it's definitely a good underlying one.
Unless it's a ghost mimic.
Then it might be.
I don't even know.
What the heck would that be like?
I don't even know what you would do to execute something like that.
But this is also making me think, really any kind of shape changer. That must just be some like weird, very base humanoid fear that we all have.
Yeah, there's a whole ooze for that.
The Oblex?
Yeah, the Oblex.
Yes.
The Oblex can look like anyone it's absorbed. An Oblex could be a whole town. And then it lives underground and just like reaches up through the wells and controls everybody in the city like puppets.
It's just playing.
Yeah. I mean, give everybody an exact routine, just like Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, which I'm pretty sure is controlled by an Oblex. But it's actually just a time loop, whatever. And then your party just starts to realize something's not quite right here. Turns out everyone's just goop.
Turns out everything was wrong there.
Yep. The people are all ooze. The buildings are all mimics.
They're on their toes.
The ghosts are all on their toes are ghosts.
But what I was going to say when I first brought up, besides mimics, other shape changers, is just like a doppelganger, which of course, like, yeah, has this kind of weird appearance in D&D, but just really has its own lore that's taken from, I guess, what, Germanic culture, right? Doppelganger, that's a German word, right?
Yeah, something European.
Yeah, and the idea, much like a lot of historic lore about fae creatures and like changelings, like that one too, is that like they replace people. So it's the idea, like that must just be some kind of like weird innate human fear we have. Like it's almost like an uncanny valley thing, right? Where something is off and you know it's off, but you can't like put your finger on it.
Yeah.
You can't put your little toes on it.
Because it's in the dark.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't personally find doppelgangers scary. I do find something with alien intelligence, such as the Ooblex, replacing things, whereas the doppelgangers are kind of just like, yeah, it's so fun. You guys are dumb. You don't even know that I'm not the person that you think I am.
Yeah, I don't really love the way they're handled in D&D either. There's cooler ways to do it. But speaking of other like European folklore, how about them werewolves? I guess they're kind of from all over the place. That's like a classic.
Yeah. I also don't find those to be particularly scary, which is why they didn't really make my list.
Like, werewolves have cool real-world lore, I feel like. I don't know. It's like with freaking lycanthropes in D&D. We've run into this again and again. We'll probably never stop talking about it. Silver freaking weapons, right?
Yeah.
Like, they shouldn't be immune to everything else.
Yeah. And also, like, becoming a were-creature, almost no downsides to that.
Yeah, it should pretty much be like, yeah, your character's dead.
Yeah, it becomes an NPC, basically, is how it should be handled.
Point is, in your D&D games, I totally recommend only letting lycanthropes have resistance to non-silvered and magical things. Because I've made that mistake at least twice now. Where I've just like forgot how it went. Like the first time was just not giving them any resistance, and you guys killed it really easily. And then another time was when I failed to like plant any weapons or whatever that you could successfully fight them with.
Well, it wasn't necessarily that you failed.
Yeah.
It was also that the module had failed.
Yeah, the module failed us all. So I'm saying the idea of having to like get that silver, you need these special things to defeat whatever the monster is, whether it's a werewolf or something else. Like having some secret weakness where there's like obscure lore that you need to research about this thing is always a fun touch.
It's even more fun if you're trapped in the library with the thing you have to research.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Is that a reference to something?
No.
That seemed very specific.
I just thought of that.
I like it. I mean, it reminded me of the big spooky like library maze thing that I made that you guys played in and fought a mummy.
A mummy lord.
But it was reflavored as the long undead master archivist of this library, and I just used the mummy stats because it was like made of paper, and that was cool.
Yeah, and it was dark.
It was dark, and I don't know how many toads were involved. So yeah, another one. Freaking vampires. I guess I've never faced one in D&D. I haven't read their like actual stat block and stuff in a while. But vampires have all this cool lore like don't go in the sun. Stake to the heart. Are they messing with silver too? They can't be seen in mirrors. That is a silver thing. Yeah. So like there's all these little bits of lore. We don't have to go far into that one. But like another one that I wanted to bring up is zombies.
They don't even have like a contagion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know that zombies in D&D are supposed to be the result of necromancy rather than disease, but honestly, like, disease is kind of more scary, especially in usually a period of time where, you know, outbreaks of disease are really not well contained.
Yeah, that's probably why the myth of zombies is a universal fear as well. Like, that's in a lot of cultures too, like things coming back from the dead. And then I guess, I don't know, maybe that's a more modern take of like the zombie virus, but that is totally a thing that could make them so much cooler in D&D. because then just one zombie attacking a character or even an NPC can make more zombies, and like that makes it such a crazier threat than how they're actually handled in D&D.
And it's kind of like powerful force of nature creating zombies that has no intelligence of its own versus like one guy in a cave somewhere just making a bunch of dead things alive again. That you just go kill that guy.
Yeah, because that's always what it is. Necromancer is such a common villain.
Yeah, make bards your villains.
Okay.
That's just one that, I don't know, maybe it's a bard that only sings spooky, scary skeletons. That's a villain.
That sure is a villain. Like the time when we played this haunted house thing you made.
Oh, yeah.
That I played twice. Where there's a giant skeleton in the basement playing that song on his big old ribs.
It's the skeleton of a cloud giant that plays his ribs like a xylophone. Don't ask how he got in that basement.
Oh, yeah, because the entrance was too small.
The entrance was too small for him to get. Like, I really don't know.
But it doesn't have to be logical. That will make your players question it forever.
Yeah, like, you can do whatever you want to physics to make stuff work for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, in that crazy spooky library, physics were nuts. There was gravity changing. There was temperature changing drastically.
There were books crawling around like worms.
Yeah. Animate stuff.
Anime stuff.
Top 10 anime horror stories. So, I guess let's just remember that before you bring in any of these specific monsters, like, I don't know, like my cousin who's super afraid of clowns, wouldn't want to fight some kind of clown thing. So it's always good, like we said at the top of the show, to ask your players what's their right amount of fear, what do they not want to see, what are some cool things. Because just that expectation then of like, oh man, are they going to use the scary thing that I told them about or the one that the other player in the group told them about? Like just that kind of sensation will keep them excited throughout. And then you make sure you buy one of those haunted house CDs.
Make sure you buy one and use it.
I was going to say make sure it doesn't have chainsaws.
Make sure it doesn't have chainsaws, though.
Unless you really want to throw them off.
Yeah.
Edit every monster. Everything should be customized.
Everything should be a ghost and or a mimic.
Because that is guaranteed to keep your players in the dark.
On their toes. And trapped.
Okay, thanks.
The end.
Keep building.
Grace World Destroyer, out.
I was gonna say, like, R.I.P. or something, because that's spooky.